Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
So glad you can join us. St. Lucia inches closer to changing its marijuana policies. This story takes the lead in our 996th edition of Caribbean Perspective for Monday, 30th November 2020. Details after this important message.
The hurricane season is now upon us, so we as Caribbean people need to remember to think safety and be prepared. Avoid venturing outside during a storm or hurricane, especially if there are strong winds. Rooftops and other debris are often blown about and can cause great damage.
Welcome back. The St. Lucia Cabinet has endorsed recommendations from the Cannabis Commission to expunge the criminal record of people charged with unlawful possession of cannabis. National Security Minister Herman Gill Francis speaks on this issue. Colby DeVoe of HTS News Force reports.
After years of pro-cannabis groups advocating that the Senate expunge the records of non-violent offenders arrested for marijuana, a major step is set to be taken towards that reality. The Cabinet recently endorsed the St. Lucia Cannabis Commission's recommendation to strike out the criminal records of persons charged with unlawful possession of cannabis under 30 grams. National Security Minister Herman Gill Francis says before this can happen, legislation has to be revised.
I had to give advice from the AG office indicating that we now amend the rehabilitation of offenders, but the legislation, so that to allow them to be able to do those sort of things. Okay, or allow the Governor General to pardon. I said no. I think that we have to change the legislation of the Rehabilitation Board to allow them to be able to do that. And we're going to do it as very quickly as possible.
Persons charged for the unlawful possession of cannabis may have their records expunged by next year.
So you say 2021?
2021, yes. Most definitely. Well, I'm not sure. We'll let the minister who is the lead on that to take those sort of questions. But I know we are actively working on it, and it was brought to cabinet. We've discussed it, and so there is push forward. We are going forward.
Meanwhile, Commerce Minister Bradley Felix disclosed that work continues on the regulatory and legislative framework for the cannabis industry.
It is going full steam ahead as it relates to the AG's chambers. The last time I spoke to the AG, he has actually a dedicated team working on the whole drafting procedure. So yes, as I said, for me alone, I would have wanted the process to be a lot more advanced, but you have to understand how things work in the service, and you have to give it its own time.
The St. Lucia Cannabis Commission hopes to complete the regulatory and legislative framework by the end of November 2020. Upon completion and approval of Cabinet, the framework will be forwarded to the Legislative Drafting Unit for the drafting of the bill. This is expected to be completed by the end of the year or early 2021. Colby DeVoe, HTS News Force.
Antigua's Prime Minister Gaston Brown has spoken exclusively with ABS News following the removal of Michael Assot from the cabinet as Education Minister. The minister was charged on Thursday last. The Prime Minister and ABLP leader tells ABS his administration is resolute about good governance guidelines. And as we hear from ABS's Jessica Russell, he's also very confident about the ruling party's prospects going forward.
Former Minister for Education and Member of Parliament for All Saints West, Michael Brown, has had criminal charges laid against him. However, Prime Minister Gaston Brown says this does not mean an end to a possible political career for the former minister with his party.
He'll be using the time off to fight his case, and we hope that he'll be exonerated. On that basis, he will have the opportunity to serve again as a minister.
It's not the first time someone has been removed from Gaston Brown's cabinet. In January, the Prime Minister fired Dean Jonas from Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Barbuda Affairs for what the Prime Minister then called a toxic relationship with staff and actions contrary to good governance. Jonas was later instated as Minister for Social Transformation and the Blue Economy in May. Meanwhile, Member of Parliament for St. Peter Assot Michael was stripped of his ministerial portfolios twice within 8 months. On the latter occasion, he was removed from the cabinet as Investment and Trade Minister in May 2018 after transcripts of secretly taped telephone calls were unveiled in a British court. However, Prime Minister Brown says his government's treatment of these challenges speaks for itself.
What it demonstrates is that the Labour Party government is about good governance, and where there are these infractions, we ensure that these individuals resign their official government position. And if anything, it should increase the level of confidence in my government and that we are acting with probity.
He also says the Antigua and Barbuda Labour Party isn't short of potential candidates.
We have a plethora of good, quality, capable, competent individuals, ready to make themselves available to run on the Labour Party slate at the next general election. So we don't have a capacity problem. I mean, clearly, these are distractions, especially during the time of COVID. But we remain undaunted and we remain very optimistic about the future of the country, the future of the government, the future of the party.
Prime Minister Brown says he's confident his party will retain government with relative ease in the next election. Jessica Russell, ABS News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick.
Was the conking out of Trinidad and Tobago's offshore patrol vessels linked to mishandling of 27 Venezuelan migrants, including 16 children last weekend? Many have been asking why the migrants weren't booked, why they were held in a cell, why they were returned in a private vessel and not officially escorted by the Coast Guard. By the end of this Urvashitarari Rupnarayan TV6 story, you may have the answer.
Of the 13 vessels on the TT Coast Guard's fleet, senior Coast Guard sources say only one is operational, and that happens to be a supply vessel. Our source tells TV6 this has handicapped the operations of the Coast Guard. Crews of officers in the past would have manned the seas on 7-day shifts. When one shift is complete, another crew takes over and patrols the seas for their 7 days. But mechanical issues about 1 month ago have resulted in all but one ship, the supply vessel, remaining in operation. Our cameras show at least 6 of those vessels can be seen docked neatly at Staubles Bay today. Coast Guardsmen too have been grounded, with crews now assigned to land patrols alongside the TTPS as they continue to interdict illegal immigrants, illegal wildlife, guns and drugs. Much like the crew which last Thursday detained 27 Venezuelan nationals, including 16 children, now fighting deportation for their illegal entry into TNT. The vessels being out of commission means it has been weeks since illegal Venezuelan migrants have been deported through official means and taken back to their country by the TT Coast Guard. With migrant facilities nearing maximum capacity, officers have stopped landing or booking migrants. They instead instruct illegal migrants to return on their private vessels, minus an official Coast Guard escort. This account may answer many questions surrounding the interdiction of the 27 Venezuelans, including 16 minors last week. Some officers speaking with TV6 describe migrants caught at the sea as well organized. We are told upon interception, illegal migrants whip out mobile phones and call their TNT attorneys, who via phone demand answers from the very Coast Guard officers, their names, their rank, and the purpose of their exercise. One officer we spoke with corroborated information offered by National Security Minister Stuart Young that upon arrival at detention camps, attorneys and supposed relatives are there waiting to secure the release of those who hours earlier were found to have breached the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. As it relates to what has been described as the inhumane treatment of migrants by officers of the state, some told us, quote, "We do not ill-treat migrants. They are given clothes, food, and blankets. When you saw the child in the cell, that was because the children usually do not want to leave their parents. They may stay there for a few hours until we secure transportation to take them to the heliport." The non-functioning of vessels, we're told, is well known to those bringing illegal contraband into the country, hence the proliferation of South American birds, monkeys, marijuana, and immigrants on TNT's black market. TV6 tried reaching Chief of Defense Staff Commodore Darrell Daniels, who did not respond to our calls. Emailed queries sent to the Coast Guard were not answered up until news time. 2 Cape-class patrol boats are on order from Australia-based shipbuilding company Austal. They are scheduled for delivery in late 2020. Urvashi Tawari Rupnarayan, TV6 News.
He's lying. It's the bold accusation from the head of the Prison Officers Association, Saron Richards, who is disputing several claims made by Trinidad and Tobago's Attorney General about what has been done to address overcrowding at the maximum security prison. Richards says to date, the situation remains the same. The prison's officers are paying the price for it.
In moving to the court to ask for COVID releases, we separated the releases into categories. The first one was to ask the Commissioner of Prisons to release people under the purview of the prison's rules and the authority which we recognize he had, and the Commissioner of Prisons did that by the several hundreds.
It's just one of many pronouncements not sitting well with the Prisons Officers Association.
I can tell you, he gave incorrect information to Trinidad and Tobago. How do I describe it? I cannot describe it. The same as you, I am saying the Attorney General lied.
But is it a case of technicality or was it misrepresentation? On TV6's Morning Edition program on Wednesday, the Attorney General spoke of measures which have been initiated as part of the process for releasing inmates. But on the TV6 Morning Edition today, the Prisons Officers Association challenged the AG statements, saying there has been no release of prisoners.
The Commissioner made recommendations to the Minister. He forwarded a list of about 900 inmates. No order came from the court to reduce sentence through the COP's, the Commissioner of Prisons discretion.
But the Attorney General also had an explanation for that.
The third aspect was to ask the DPP to engage in the nolli-pros, or ending prosecutions against people who were in remand. The DPP's exercise is up to him. The last option was to refer all matters to the Mercy Committee, and for the Mercy Committee to hear applications. The Public Defenders Division has been agitating for the prisoners to come forward and their private attorneys, because the Privy Council has set out that each and every application must be heard on its own before the Mercy Committee.
The association points out that when all is said and done, the situation at the prison remains the same, and both officers and prisoners are being adversely affected.
The inmates have listened to what the Attorney General said, and if they know, because they are the one who committed the sentences, they are the one who are the remainders, and if they know the Attorney General is not talking the truth, they will lose confidence in the system, taking into consideration issues that they are plagued with and resolutions for them, because they will simply sum it up as, hey, the state is willing to lie going forward. And that has far-reaching implications for prison officers.
Vanessa Cutting, TV6.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean. In the meantime, please continue to log on to CaribbeanPerspective.com for more daily news and more.